In March 2025, Forever 21 died for the second time. Not quietly, not slowly, but in a full-scale collapse that wiped out every remaining U.S. store almost overnight. A brand that once generated $4.4 billion a year, dominated shopping malls across the world, and defined an entire generation, was suddenly gone again. 6 years earlier, Forever 21 had already declared bankruptcy. It was supposed to be the warning, the reset, the second chance. Instead, it became proof of something far worse. Because this time, there was no comeback story, no rescue plan, no revival. Just locked doors, liquidation signs, and thousands of employees out of work, while cheaper, faster competitors kept selling millions of outfits online every single day. So here's the real question. How does a fashion empire that once ruled American malls fail so completely twice in the span of a single generation? This is not just the story of a retailer that fell behind. This is the story of a company that misunderstood time itself and paid the price in full. To understand how Forever 21 collapsed, you first have to understand just how powerful it once was. This was not a niche brand. This was not a trend that came and went. Forever 21 was a cultural force. The story began in 1984 in Los Angeles, when two Korean immigrants opened a tiny clothing store aimed at young women who wanted fashion without the luxury price tag. The concept was simple and dangerously effective. Copy runway trends. Produce them fast. Sell them cheap. While traditional fashion brands move slowly, Forever 21 moved at breakneck speed. New styles arrived every few weeks. Prices stayed under $20. Teenagers didn't just shop there, they grew up there. By the late 1990s and early 2000s, Forever 21 wasn't following mall culture. It was defining it. Their stores were massive, brightly lit, and impossible to ignore. Loud music, overstuffed racks, endless mirrors. Every visit felt chaotic but intentional. The chaos made customers stay longer, browse more, buy more. At its peak, Forever 21 operated more than 800 stores worldwide, from the United States to Europe to Asia. In 2015, the company reached its absolute high point, $4.4 billion in annual revenue. For millennials, Forever 21 wasn't just affordable fashion, it was the uniform of youth. First dates, high school dances, college parties, weekend mall trips. The brand embedded itself into everyday life, especially for young women who wanted to feel stylish without feeling broke. From the outside, Forever 21 looked unstoppable. A privately owned empire. No Wall Street pressure, no flashy tech dependency, just endless foot traffic, and cash registers that never stopped ringing. But beneath that success was a dangerous assumption, one that would eventually destroy everything. Forever 21 believed the mall would last forever, and that belief shaped every decision that followed. This is the moment everything breaks. Not because of a scandal, not because of a lawsuit, but because of a decision that felt safe and turned out to be lethal. Forever 21 made one core bet about the future, the bet that physical retail would remain the center of youth culture, even as mall traffic declined year after year, even as smartphones replaced storefronts, even as shopping became something you did alone, at night, on a screen. Instead of retreating, Forever 21 expanded. Bigger stores, longer leases, or locations in premium malls with rising rents. Executives believed scale was protection, that visibility created demand, that if young customers saw the store, they would eventually walk in. For a while, the numbers didn't immediately contradict them. Revenue stayed high. Stores were crowded on weekends. The brand still felt everywhere. That illusion delayed panic and delayed action. While Forever 21 doubled down on physical presence, the industry quietly rewired itself. Fashion stopped being seasonal. It became instant. Trends were no longer forecasted months ahead. They were discovered in real time through data, search behavior, and social feeds. Online native competitors didn't ask, "What will customers want next quarter?" They asked, "What are they clicking on right now?" Forever 21 couldn't answer that question. Its supply chain was built for bulk, not precision. Its inventory system rewarded volume, not speed. and its cost structure depended on something the internet was actively destroying: foot traffic. Then came 2019. The first bankruptcy should have been the reset. The moment to abandon the old model entirely, the chance to become digital first or digital only. Instead, leadership treated bankruptcy like a timeout. Stores were closed, but not reimagined. Systems were trimmed, not rebuilt. The core assumption stayed intact: the mall would come back. It didn't. And while Forever 21 waited for customers to return to stores, a new generation was forming habits that had nothing to do with physical retail at all. By the time the company realized its mistake wasn't temporary, that it wasn't cyclical, that it was structural, the business was already trapped, locked into leases, buried under inventory, too heavy to pivot, too slow to compete. Forever 21 didn't fail because it chose the wrong trend. It failed because it chose the wrong future. The collapse of Forever 21 did not begin with outrage. There were no mass boycotts, no viral cancellation, a single tweet that destroyed the brand overnight. What happened was far more dangerous. Forever 21 became irrelevant as the company fought to keep its mall-based empire alive. The center of fashion culture had already moved somewhere it could not follow. Shopping was no longer an experience. It was content. Trends were no longer discovered in stores. They were born on social media, accelerated by algorithms, and validated by millions of views in a matter of hours. On platforms like TikTok and Instagram, fashion was no longer about browsing racks. It was about speed, repetition, and visibility. Haul videos replaced shopping trips. Influencers replaced mannequins. And brands that failed to appear in those feeds might as well not exist. Forever 21 wasn't attacked online. It was ignored. Search trends declined. Influencer mentions vanished. For Gen Z, the brand felt outdated, not offensive, not controversial, just invisible. It became associated with mall culture, not youth culture, with the past, not the present. At the same time, competitors rewrote the rules in public view. Online-first platforms released thousands of new styles every week, testing demand in real time and killing products that didn't perform within days. Prices fell even lower. Delivery times got shorter. And thanks to international shipping loopholes, those brands could undercut American retailers without paying the same costs or taxes. Forever 21 responded the only way it knew how: by explaining, by pointing to unfair competition, by blaming trade policy, by defending a system customers had already abandoned. But markets don't care about explanations. They care about alternatives, and there were plenty. While Forever 21 tried to convince shoppers to come back to stores, younger consumers were building entirely new habits, buying clothes from their phones, influenced by creators they trusted, from brands that felt native to their world. The backlash wasn't emotional. It was behavioral. Customers didn't protest. They didn't complain. They didn't ask the brand to change. They simply stopped showing up. And when a business loses cultural relevance before it loses money, the financial collapse that follows is not a surprise. It is a conclusion. By the time Forever 21 reached its second bankruptcy, the debate was already over. The numbers had spoken. At its peak in 2015, Forever 21 generated $4.4 billion in annual revenue and operated more than 800 stores worldwide. The brand dominated malls, attracted millions of young shoppers, and expanded aggressively across continents. Less than 10 years later, that empire had effectively collapsed. After the first bankruptcy in 2019, Forever 21 was supposed to emerge leaner and more focused. Instead, revenue continued to erode year after year, between 2022 and 2024 alone. The company reportedly lost hundreds of millions of dollars, with cumulative losses approaching $400 million in just 3 years. Operating costs remained brutally high. Mall leases locked the company into long-term commitments, many signed during its expansion years. Rent obligations, staffing costs, and inventory storage continued to drain cash, even as foot traffic fell and sales weakened. The cost structure was built for a world that no longer existed. Debt told an even darker story. By the time Forever 21 filed for bankruptcy again in 2025, the company was carrying over $1 billion in liabilities, while its assets were valued at only a fraction of that amount. The gap between what the business owed and what it owned had become unbridgeable. Store count became the most visible symbol of failure, from more than 800 global locations at its peak to roughly 540 after the first bankruptcy, to 0 operating stores in the United States after the second. This wasn't a slow decline measured in percentages. It was a collapse measured in closures. Meanwhile, online native competitors were growing at double-digit rates, shipping directly to consumers without stores, without leases, and without the overhead crushing traditional retailers. Their scale increased as Forever 21's shrank. Their margins improved as Forever 21's disappeared. The contrast was merciless. Forever 21 didn't just lose money, it lost the ability to recover. And once a company reaches that point, no rebrand, no restructuring, and no rescue capital can reverse the outcome. Next comes the most important question of all. Why did leadership let it get this far? Forever 21's collapse looks sudden on paper. In reality, it was the result of multiple structural failures compounding. Over time, each one weakening the company until collapse became inevitable. The first failure was a complete misread of the customer. Forever 21 was designed for millennials at a specific moment in history. Mall culture, impulse buying, and physical browsing. That generation aged out. Their spending slowed, their priorities changed, but the brand never replaced them. Gen Z did not inherit Forever 21. They never formed habits around it. They didn't associate it with identity or aspiration. And most importantly, they did not discover fashion the way Forever 21 assumed they would. Gen Z doesn't search for brands. They encounter products through feeds. Discovery moved from storefronts to algorithms, from brand-driven marketing to creator-driven culture. Forever 21 tried to participate in this new world, but it did so half-heartedly without the systems, speed, or credibility required to compete. That led directly to the second failure, strategic hesitation. Leadership understood that e-commerce mattered, but never treated it as existential. Digital investment was incremental, defensive, and late. Online was viewed as a channel, not the core business. In fast fashion, that distinction is fatal. By the time Forever 21 reacted, online native competitors were already operating at a different scale and speed. They weren't guessing trends. They were testing them live. Data replaced intuition. Algorithms replaced buyers. Forever 21's supply chain couldn't keep up. It was built for bulk manufacturing, not microtrends. It's for stocking shelves, not responding to viral spikes. Inventory decisions were made weeks in advance, while competitors adjusted product lines daily. The third failure came after the first bankruptcy, the private equity trap. New ownership stabilized the business financially, but failed to reinvent it culturally. Cost-cutting replaced transformation. Store closures reduced losses, but didn't create growth. The brand survived on paper while continuing to decay in relevance. This wasn't malicious. It was logical and wrong. Private equity excels at optimization, but Forever 21 needed reinvention. Finally, there was the fast fashion paradox. Forever 21 helped create the fast fashion model, but it couldn't survive the version of that model it inspired. What was once fast became slow. What was once cheap became expensive. What was once disruptive became obsolete. Competitors didn't just outperform Forever 21. They invalidated the assumptions it was built on. By the time leadership accepted that the system itself was broken, the company was too large, too rigid, and too indebted to escape. This wasn't a leadership mistake in a single year. It was a decade-long failure to accept that the rules had changed and that the brand no longer fit them. And when structure collapses, people follow. When Forever 21 collapsed for the second time, there was no dramatic resignation speech, no public reckoning, a bold plan for reinvention, just silence and shutdowns. Behind closed doors, leadership meetings no longer focused on growth or recovery. The conversation had narrowed to one question only: what could still be salvaged? Executives were replaced quietly. Departments were dissolved. Thousands of employees were laid off as U.S. operations were wound down completely. Store managers learned their locations would never reopen. Visual teams, buyers, and planners who had spent years inside the brand were suddenly gone. For many, there was no transition period, just a notice and a locked door. Suppliers were hit next. Factories were left with unpaid invoices. Production orders were canceled mid-cycle. Relationships built over decades ended in weeks. The ripple effects extended far beyond the company itself, reaching manufacturers, logistics partners, and mall operators who had depended on Forever 21's scale. At the ownership level, the tone shifted from optimism to damage control. What had once been pitched as a turnaround became an asset liquidation. The brand name, intellectual property, and remaining international licenses were separated from the retail business itself. The question was no longer how to rebuild Forever 21, but whether the name still had value on its own. No leader escaped responsibility. Founders lost control of the empire they built. New owners failed to revive it. Management teams cycled through without changing the outcome. Forever 21 did not collapse because of one bad executive. It collapsed because leadership across multiple eras refused to confront the same truth. The system they were defending no longer worked. And when leadership protects a broken system long enough, collapse stops being a possibility. It becomes a certainty. Next comes the final reckoning. Forever 21 leaves behind more than empty storefronts. It leaves behind a warning. The first lesson is brutally simple. Relevance is not permanent. Forever 21 dominated an era because it understood its customer better than anyone else at the time. But success created comfort, and comfort delayed adaptation. By the time leadership realized that youth culture had moved on, the brand was already speaking a language its audience no longer understood. The second lesson is about speed versus scale. For years, Forever 21 believed size was its advantage. More stores meant more visibility. More inventory meant more choice. But in the digital era, scale without speed becomes weight. Competitors didn't need hundreds of stores. They needed systems that could respond instantly to demand. Forever 21 had scale. Its rivals had velocity. The third lesson is about structural honesty. Bankruptcy is not a reset if the core assumptions stay the same. Cutting costs does not equal transformation. And optimizing a broken model only delays collapse. Forever 21 treated its first bankruptcy as a financial problem when it was actually a cultural and strategic one. Finally, there is a lesson about customers leaving quietly. Brands often fear backlash, boycotts, and outrage. But those are visible. They can be responded to. What Forever 21 faced was far worse: indifference. When customers stop caring, there is no crisis meeting that can save you. Markets don't punish companies for being wrong. They punish them for being late. Forever 21 wasn't destroyed by a single competitor, a single policy, or a single mistake. It was undone by a decade of hesitation in an industry that rewards decisiveness above all else. And once hesitation becomes habit, failure becomes inevitable. All that remains now is the final question: what comes after the fall? Forever 21 did not disappear with a bang. It faded out quietly, steadily, until one day the stores were simply gone. An empire that once defined youth culture, shaped mall economies, and generated billions in revenue now exists only as a name, separated from the business that gave it meaning. No scandal closed it. No villain took it down in a single blow. Time did. So here's the question that matters. Was Forever 21 ever truly salvageable after its first collapse? Or was its second bankruptcy the unavoidable consequence of refusing to let go of the past? Because this story is bigger than fashion. It's about what happens when companies confuse familiarity with relevance. When they protect legacy instead of rebuilding identity. When they wait for customers to come back instead of meeting them where they already are. If you want more deep dives into corporate disasters, strategic failures, and business empires that collapsed under their own weight, make sure to subscribe to the channel. Tell us in the comments, which fallen empire should we uncover next?